Let's check out this update of George R. R. Martin versus House of Dragon showrunners. And yeah, George R. R. Martin's been he's been hating on House of the Dragon season 2. Well, especially Maelor the Missing, he calls it. And Helena, what might happen to her, I don't want to spoil it, in season 3. Not making sense because of changes that they've done with Maelor and some other stuff. I feel like he was just using that as an example to let you know like how their little changes are fucking things up for his writing, for his story, for the main point of the story. How he called it the butterfly effect, how the butterfly effect is changing things for the future of his story. And yeah, let's see now that it seems like Carmine and his boy Preston Jacobs might have jumped the gun a bit when they were probably making fun of him and saying, why is he going mad about Maelor? And why didn't he go mad at Dan and Dave for what they did to the later half of Game of Thrones? Why didn't he say, what have they done the same way? You know, why hasn't he criticised them the same way? But it looks like he's going to say the reason why is because they didn't listen Ryan Condal didn't listen to what his suggestions were. Whereas, I don't know if he made suggestions to Dan and Dave.
Where a fellow author revealed that the House of the Dragon's writer's room may be disrespecting him, which leads me to believe that his outburst on Condal last time may have been justified after all. We're going to be talking about all that and more on today's video, so be sure to tell the YouTube algorithm. So first things first, after last week's drama, we all waited to see what George would say next, and like I said, he pretended like nothing happened. But he talks about the death of one of his good friends and how that has impacted him and his work. He goes on to say, writing came hard, and though I did produce some new pages on both The Winds of Winter, yes, and Blood and Fire, the sequel to Fire and Blood, the second part of my Targaryen history.
How are you going to call the sequel to Fire and Blood, Blood and Fire? That just seems mad to me, man. Like, how are you going to... That's so confusing. Like when you're trying to just talk about these books off the cuff, you're gonna be like Fire and Blood, Blood. Do you mean Blood and Fire? Like, I mean, I don't know, man. George R. R. Martin is becoming lazy writing. You mean lazy at writing? Yeah. I don't know what his problem is, man. I'm just saying, like, if because I won't say I'm a writer necessarily because I haven't got any works, but I definitely like to write. I like to write stories. I like to create stories. I like to create characters that would have a backstory and stuff like that in different mediums and stuff like that. And I think one of my biggest dreams would be to create like a story that everybody loves and wants to read and wants to watch or wants to play. Depending, the media format doesn't even matter as long as they love the story. And I just feel like, I guess it's easy for me to say in my position, but if there was people clamoring for my works, especially after it's been on TV and stuff, and it wasn't that great on TV, that's all I would care about getting out. But I know it's easier said than done, and he's probably got his issues, but...
Turned when I should have been sleeping. When I did sleep, well, my dreams were none too pleasant either. So he pretty much glossed over the Condal stuff and went straight into revealing that he's written some new pages for Winds, and is currently working on the sequel to Fire and Blood Part 2 called Blood and Fire, which, by the way, that's completely new. We did not know he was actively working on that, but...
I've only written some new pages since the last announcement about Winds or release or whatever. Bruh.
Which, by the way, ends, and it's currently working on the sequel to Fire and Blood.
Well, how are you going to work on this and write for Winds? But what about Dream of Spring? Does even...
Part 2 called Blood and Fire. Which, by the way, that's
a way that you can just wrap Winds of Winter up with some elements of A Dream of Spring? I know that sounds like Game of Thrones Season 8 all over again, but I'm sure George will make it work. You know, he's got a lot more room to breathe with just, you know, writing on paper. So, I don't know.
Completely new. We did not know he was actively working on that, but there it is. He also confirms what we discussed on the podcast a while back, that a majority of his time is taken up by all these television projects, though I find it interesting how his mood has shifted from fury to despair. Of course, that hasn't stopped people online from linking that his outburst last week is partly to blame, and honestly, I don't blame those people for coming to that conclusion.
Thank you, Carmine. You've been saying for weeks now how everybody thinks George is mad at Ryan Condal, and every week, slowly, they chip away at you to tell you, listen, fam, George is pissed, and you just don't want to believe it for some reason. You just want to caper for HBO. I don't know why.
And we'll get to that in a moment. But he goes on to say, I've been planning our European trip for some time. He says our here, I'm assuming he went with his wife and maybe some assistants. The Duncan Egg show would start filming in July, and I wanted to visit the shoot in Northern Ireland. And a month later, there would be a Worldcon in Glasgow. I had not been to a Worldcon since the Dublin convention.
It's hard, man. Because I was about to say, like, bro, stop messing around. Forget the Duncan Egg show. Let HBO do what they're doing. You can make your legacy by finishing those books, and then they'll know that's the real shit, you know? Even if you don't get to come back after you finish the books to do some shows, maybe you might be too old, or God forbid, you know. And yeah, man, just get those books done. Don't be flying to go see what's going on with the Duncan Egg show and worrying about how House of the Dragon is being portrayed. You can have like a little comment here and there if you're watching it in your own time, but George shouldn't even be getting involved in this shit, man. George should just be focused on Winds of Winter, but you can't be telling people what they're going to do with their time, especially when they haven't probably got that much time left, you know. Yeah, that's the other side of it. But I don't know, man. I'd want to get those books finished, man, especially how big they are.
In 2019.
George R. Martin's never going to finish his book. It doesn't feel like it, does it? It's really sad. I always wish for the best, but this is going to be a Shenmue 3-4 situation. We got Shenmue 3 in the end, but then we just didn't do anything for us getting Shenmue 3. It kind of pissed me off. Anyway, Winds of Winter won't be a Shenmue 3 situation, I don't think, because I think that'll be an epic book, unlike Shenmue 3 that wasn't really an epic game. But we're not going to get the satisfying end we deserve, and that George deserves to have for his magnum opus.
In the second blog post, he goes into some stuff he didn't want to talk about, and it's just him listing off all the television shows he's checking out. He mentions the election and solidifies his anti-Trump stance because, of course, he did.
I mean, I guess.
However, George mentioning his convention appearances is important because that's where he met fellow writer Shiran J. Zhao, whose name I hope I said correctly, and apparently...
But if I was George's wife, I know she's looking at this like, hey, you leaning a little bit too close to him, girl. Like I know you're like a fellow writer and that, but you're leaning a little bit too close to my man's there. You see me? That's what I feel like his wife. Did she take the picture?
George has been so unsatisfied with what's going on behind the scenes at House of the Dragon that he's been actively complaining about it to whoever he can. First time we heard about that was at BuboniCon, then to Elio Garcia, who has worked with George before and had dinner with him recently. And according to Zhao, George said something to them too.
George R. Martin should learn from creator of Attack on Titan, finish his manga and anime. I know, right? I mean, I guess it helps that the creator of Attack on Titan, he might be younger than me. Was he like 40? No, yeah, he's 40. So he's older than me, I'm sure. I think he started when he was 30 or maybe 20 or 25 or something. But yeah, George just needs to finish that shit, man. I'm starting to, I mean, it sounds silly, maybe people already thought this, but I'm starting to feel like it's not that he can't finish his books because it's too hard to write, or that he's stuck on where the characters are. I think he may have lost a bit of passion for certain things in the book, writing new stories for the book, and I think he's just getting distracted, you know.
Because, as so you know, or I'm sure you will now, Zhao isn't really in the fandom and doesn't really want to be. But they also wanted to support George, and I'd like to go over some of their tweets now. This is in regards to George blasting Ryan Condal, and it puts a lot of it into perspective. Alright, there's been some discourse about George R. Martin because of that post he made going rogue on House of the Dragon's writers, deleted a few hours later, but archived. I'm seeing some misinformed reactions by people who aren't in the publishing or entertainment industry, so let me clarify some things. Creators are not the ones with power, executives are. Even the author as big as George gets their opinions dismissed if the higher-ups don't want to listen. Yeah, this is true. We've seen George...
Creators are not the ones in power, execs are. Nah, because we got J.K. Rowling as evidence, man. Like, no one could stop her from doing what she wanted to do, or okaying things she wanted to okay, or saying no to stuff that she didn't want. I mean, I can imagine like directors and executives went to her and said, look, JK, we can't do this. Do it this way. Like Hermione can't have the fake buck teeth because like, what's her name? Emma Watson can't talk properly. You know, Daniel Radcliffe can't have the green eyes because, you know, it hurts his eyes. He's got to have his big blue ones instead, his natural blue ones. And J.K. Rowling's going to be like, well, I don't want to be a prick. So, okay. But there'll be certain big things that she could say no to because she had that in her flipping contract, whereas George clearly didn't, because they're changing big ass things that I can't imagine they would change in a Harry Potter thing, because J.K. Rowling made that shit hers. I don't know what she put in her contract that these other creators can't, but good on her for that. Obviously they changed a lot for the movies, but I think she understood that it's a movie, it's different, so there's nothing you could do there. But George has got long hours for this shit, so they have got no excuse, I don't think. J.K. Rowling's smart enough to do business deal. Yeah, I don't know if she had some good lawyers or what, but she seems like the only author that has complete control. You know, well, it feels like she has complete control anyway. I don't know what it is.
So, okay, this is fairly spicy, and I would love to know more.
HBO is not listening to George's feedback and concern for years. They do not have to, because once adaptation rights are signed away, it is out of the author's hands. Nah, man. Because that's not true. Is he going to bring up J.K. Rowling? Because I swear it doesn't work like that for her. That's crazy. Why did you sign it off like that, man?
About what George told HBO. Because the only thing we do know is that George has been public about this. Like, he felt as though they could have gone on for 10 to 12 seasons had they adapted the books more closely. But also, let's be honest for 2 seconds here, nobody wants to work on one
Why did he go, let's be honest? What was he trying to imply?
Television show for most of their lives. You can give Dave and Dan as much shit as you want, but some people just don't want a good chunk of their whole entire career dominated by one single job, actors included. Asking for 10 to 12 seasons was always going to...
Bro, there's people working in shit-ass jobs in, like, you know, 9 to 5, blue-collar, white-collar jobs where we have to just, for 30, 20, 25, 30 years... Bro, having 12 years on an amazing show, the best show in the world, and everyone loving it is not going to hurt you that much. It'll be part of your legacy, man. Deal with it, you know? And even then, you don't have to be in it. You can leave in season 5 and get some new passionate writers in. Make sure you vet them properly, not just get any random old shit. Yeah, make sure they love the material. Maybe they can even be better than the old writers. You know, that's if I've got a show that I'm doing for 10 to 12 years, and I need to replace the current writers on there, I'll make sure that they're going to be better than the ones that just left. No matter what, that'll be the main priority. And people can leave whenever they want. Yeah, they blacklisted. They wanted to do Star Wars. And all that happened is they just ruined their legacy because they were too desperate and impatient and they wanted to do Star Wars. People really don't realize how good they have it, man. They just want more and more and greed, and it's just crazy.
Be unrealistic, so feel free to disagree with that, but people just don't work that way, especially when everyone involved has options to do other things. He's not complaining for complaining's sake. I hung out with him a few weeks ago, there it is, and heard his full scope of opinions on House of the Dragon, and what he said in that post was very mild. Probably the least spicy storytelling.
Why is it so hard for Preston and Carmine to know that? If you watch their previous video, man, they were literally like, oh, is that all he had to say? Is that all he had to say about Maelor? There was so much other stuff that he could have talked about. Why is he only talking about Maelor? Is that the only problem he had? It doesn't even make sense to be mad about. I was like, where's your critical thinking, boys? Like, obviously he's going to be pissed about other stuff. He's going to talk about one thing because, first of all, yeah, he's thrown them under the bus, but he doesn't want to flip and run them over multiple times after he's thrown them under the bus, right? Secondly, he's gonna be pissed about other stuff. Clearly, it's so obvious, but he's not going to talk about it all in one go. That's why he used the butterfly effect, and that's why he gave the example of Maelor, because the butterfly effect was his main point. The fact that season 3 and 4 he thinks it's going to be toxic was his other main point. The whole Maylor thing was just an example, and I don't know why Preston and Carmine blew that shit out of proportion.
Critique he could have brought up. And I do believe this was on purpose and strategic. He's not going full scorched earth on HBO, but he's showing them that he could. He did this as a warning shot to get them to listen to him, because clearly he saw...
Damn! What? That's spicy as hell. George R. R. Martin coming like he's flipping Tywin, sending a letter or something like, look, I'm going to just write this letter and then see what happens.
Some very upsetting plans for upcoming House of the Dragon seasons. If he just wanted to complain, there was spicier shit he could have said. Oh my god, and I wish he had.
It doesn't matter, Carmine. He said enough. Bro, what he did was powerful enough. Like, the fact that everyone's ears are up, like, George R. R. Martin ain't even happy, bro. That's all they need to know, that he's not happy. They don't even need to know the details of why he's not happy, you know?
He had, but I also want to push back on something she said here. I really don't think it's HBO coming in and telling the writer's room, make Alicent a really bad character, or put these visions in here. The one thing I would say that HBO probably told them to do was try to connect it more to Game of Thrones. I would agree with that, but I really think at the end of the day...
Even the connecting to Game of Thrones stuff isn't even the biggest problem. He's right that the executives probably would want to connect it to Game of Thrones, but they've done that, and it's a bit cheesy, it's a bit cringe when they do it in the show, but it's like, whatever, like, as long as the rest of the shit is good, who cares if they do The Song of Ice and Fire, Aegon's Dream, Winter is Coming and all that. If they connect it to Game of Thrones, okay, it is what it is. But the thing that's a real big issue is the character writing. Alicent isn't like Alicent in the books. Daemon isn't like making sense about his druggy storyline and getting high in Harrenhal and then suddenly deciding to be Rhaenyra's bitch boy, for lack of a better term, and Aemond just being a psychopath without seeing it on the screen. And it's not HBO's fault, Ryan Condal or Sarah Hess's fault that they had to cut the season short to 8 episodes. That's the executives again with the money issue. But what is their fault, especially with Alicent and Rhaenyra just being the focus, is the stupid over the top pseudo feminist writing where it's like you're trying so hard to make these women seem like they're fighting the patriarchy that you've just destroyed the whole concept of what George was trying to write in the first place, and it's so annoying. It's like they ruined Alicent's character because of that. I don't know what they're doing with Helena. Helena was interesting at first with this new idea that she's like a special, I don't know what they call it, green seer or dragon's dreamer or whatever, but they've just messed it up in the last episode where she suddenly was spoiling the rest of the books and was telling like people when they're gonna die straight up, and like she was basically Deadpool at this point, breaking the fourth wall. You're in a story written by George R. R. Martin, and your fate is written, but actually technically it's written by Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess, because this is a different story. That's what it felt like. And yeah, it's just starting to get silly now. I don't know. Alicent going to see Rhaenyra and saying, let's run away together. Oh man, you can kill my son, that's okay, kill my son. The only way they can fix that is if the next season starts and Alicent was like, I was Agatha all along or something. She was faking it all along, basically. Like she was just trying to do Rhaenyra dirty. That would be pretty epic, and it'll give her evil, sneaky status that she had in the books, I guess. But it doesn't sound like that's what they're doing based on what George's knowledge is on season 3, and he's very unhappy. So, well, that's annoying. Get rid of Sarah Hess and Ryan Condal, please, and get people that actually flipping love the books and don't want to write a story about patriarchy and write a story about how Alicent is a woman for Trump and she's a conservative nightmare, and how Rhaenyra is a rock star liberal leftist woman or whatever. Just get that modern crap out of there and write what George wrote. Yes, you can talk about feminism. Yes, you can talk about the patriarchy, but do it from the context of Game of Thrones and House of Dragon and Fire and Blood. It's not that hard. Do you think House of Dragon is going to be another bad TV show? Probably, if they keep going down this route. And based on George is going, like, George is pissed right now. And according to what his friend was apparently saying, he's really pissed, and he's just giving us a little bit of how pissed he is. So he basically said before he deleted it that season 3 and 4, there's possibly gonna be more toxic changes to come. And that's just like, so HBO's learned nothing from season 8. I don't know why they want to change people's shit.
Is just the writer's room coming in and putting their own things in this, trying to make it their own, so to speak. But Zhao here ends the whole post with, for those of you who thinks he's disrespecting the show's writers, how do you think he felt when they have dismissed his feedback in private, there it is, and driven him to the point of risking legal action to make his point to them?
Damn, this girl might be talking a bit too much, man. Who is this chick? That's the Asian chick in the video, in the picture right there. We're cuddling up and that. Bruh. She might be saying a bit too much to the point of risking legal action. Bro, that's wild. Is that the beef is like that, huh? That's crazy.
Okay, so this is the juicy bit I wanted to know. Somehow, George found out that the writers are actively dismissing his ideas and feedback in private, and I guess that pissed him off enough to do what he did.
This is what happens. George is like, look, where's Nettles? Nettles ain't even here, fam. We need her to be riding Sheep Stealer. Why is Baylor or whatever riding? Was it Raina? Rayla, whatever. Why is she riding Sheep Stealer? What's going on? Sheep Stealer shouldn't even be in the Vale. The dragons can't fly out the Vale. They fly around Dragonstone or where they're kept or whatever he said before in his dragon blog. And and he's like, what the hell's going on? Why is Alicent and Rhaenyra visiting each other and chatting shit to each other? They should be like beefing right now. Why is Rhaenyra forgotten about the death of her son, Lucerys? All of a sudden she's trying to make peace and that. Why is Alicent not bothered about her daughter's son, her grandson, getting his head literally cut off while he slept, while she was messing around with Kristen Cole? You'd think she wanted to make up for that, like stopping Kristen Cole from doing his job just so she can enjoy him, and then your grandson gets his head cut off for it. Like, maybe, be a bit angry about that. I mean, I guess to be fair, she blames herself for it, but like making up to the camp that did it probably isn't the most realistic feeling thing. Yeah, man. I think those are the things George would have said to Sarah Hess and that, and they just went, yes, thanks for telling us, George. We'll keep those things in mind. And they went back and said, George is being a mansplaining asshole, telling us how to write his book. We know how to write his book better because we have the power of feminism. Anyway,
we covered this briefly on the podcast, but there is a mole in the writer's room.
Like Netflix, which show writers don't follow source material. Yeah, I didn't think they'll be this bad. HBO is usually pretty decent. Even their Watchmen TV show, which was kind of annoying and didn't feel like the proper Watchmen, a sequel to the proper Watchmen, there was still really good elements in there. But obviously Game of Thrones, even House of Dragon season 1, there was really good shit in there. HBO is usually on point. But this, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not terrible. Season 2 wasn't even that bad like that from a non-book reader's perspective. But it looks like the butterfly effect is going to take massive effect, and it's going to mess up a lot of things for season 3 and 4, unless they've got some really good ways to cover for that stuff.
Actively feeding George this info. Preston believes it's George's longtime assistant T. Mickle, but I would love it if the mole was actually Ryan Condal himself and George is just playing 4D chess by trying to maneuver away from making it seem like it's Condal behind the scenes, but at the same time, he is the showrunner and the buck stops with him, so... And they wrap it up by saying, just because he didn't mention something in the post doesn't mean he approves of it or doesn't care, and the post should not be used to extrapolate his opinions on anything that's not related to what he specifically addressed. Again, what he said was very mild. Ultimately, what matters to him is logical storytelling and complex, morally gray characters. Lastly, I do not consider myself part of the House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones fandoms. I'm a casual and defending him as a fellow author. Please do not involve me in any fandom drama. I do not know what's going on in there and I don't want to. Now imagine the person you picked to run your situation has turned around and started disrespecting you by ignoring your ideas and feedback on your own creation. And yes, that is a huge level of disrespect. And let's be real for a minute. Ryan Condal doesn't have to take George's feedback, but my god, man, after the disaster that was Game of Thrones' final seasons, you'd think they would set aside some pride and take the man's words a bit more seriously.
Don't underestimate the power of Hollywood ego. Did you not? You didn't even watch Entourage. You just thought it was about a bunch of misogynistic men just having fun and banging women, which was a big part of it. But Entourage was also showing you what Hollywood people are really like and how egotistical they are and how much politics there are in Hollywood, and not even intelligent politics at that. It's just politics of, I know what's best. I'm making a movie. George doesn't make TV anymore. He's old. He's done. He doesn't understand the politics and the feminism we're trying to portray here. You know, there's just so much ego in this world, man. In Hollywood, there's no actual passion. Even people that are passionate, they got too much ego, man.
Because he knows the characters, he wrote them. And look, I understand that with adaptations, some liberties have to be made, but again, you don't know the material better than the guy who literally wrote it.
Thank God manga creators have control of their manga, go to anime. Yeah, thank God for that. I don't know what it is, but Japan just do that shit right, man. Like, if you notice, anime is like 95% accurate to the manga source material most times. And if they do change something, it's just because they've added filler or they've made something a little bit more convenient or something like that. But the storylines, the characters, everything's the same. You know, they don't do these massive drastic changes. I mean, to be fair, like House of the Dragon is like more like a history book than a proper storybook. So there's room there to add things and change things slightly, or especially since it's not they use this excuse a lot, since it's not a reliable narrator. But that still doesn't mean you can just do whatever the hell you want to do, man. Like with the main, like this should be easy for them. They've got main plot points they just have to stick to, and they can add little bits of their fun little. If they want an ego rub, they can add their ego dialogue and ego mini stories in the middle of those things, but not change the big things. I don't get it.
Again, it seems like there is way more that happened than he didn't like, which brings me to my next point. I asked several of you guys on my community poll if you thought him posting that blog attacking Condal was unprofessional. Almost 8,000 people voted, with 67% saying it wasn't, 21% saying it was, while 12% didn't care. I agree with the 67% of people who said he had every right, but George wasted his only chance to lay out all of his issues, and I hate that so much. I get what Zhao is saying, that his issues
How
of
is that his only chance? He could do another blog post if you want. So who's going to stop him? I mean, yeah, they might, are they going to fire him? What would it look like if George R. R. Martin makes a blog post scathing HBO and then they fire him, and then people are just going to be like, okay, cool. What's going to happen is the book fans are going to rally behind George. They're going to defend the fuck out of him and they're going to side with him. And because the book fans are doing that, the casuals will follow along too. They'll hear this through the grapevine and they'll be like, oh shit. The actual book fans and George R. R. Martin think the show is trash, and I'm going to just sit here and watch this show that the creator and the loyal book fans think is trash. Nah, I'm not wasting my time on this. HBO can't afford that. So yeah, George can write what the fuck he wants if he's brave enough.
The missing was only the tip of the iceberg, and that he was just firing a warning shot. But at the risk of this being clipped out of context, let me just say, don't just give me the tip, give me the whole damn thing. Clearly, he has issues with more of the changes than he's letting on. And the only major changes I can see that he'd have an issue with beyond Maelor, off the top of my head, would be the stuff to Daemon, Alicent, and Helena. Rhaenyra spending all of her time not doing much is actually an issue with HBO cutting back on the episodes and the writer's strike not allowing for the writers to change up the second half of the season, thus the pacing issues. But the stuff that I really wanted him to hone in on was, all the crazy stuff that happened, especially at the last episode. Alicent straight up betraying her own family. Helena having insane powers of green seeing that would rival Bran. Daemon and Alice being aware of Bloodraven and and the White Walkers and that whole situation. That's all new and show only, and no way George is okay with any of that. But again, he missed his one shot to lay.
Remember, he is kind of scary being cancelled. Who, George? Yeah, I guess he's not seen it from the perspective of the fans will rally behind me and that. But he did kind of hint at that in his blog post where he said it seems fans were pissed off about Maelor. I think that's why he used that as an example, because he knew that the fans were quite vocal about that one. I mean, they're vocal about a lot of things after that, but I guess he wasn't following after that. He knew. I think it was the Maelor thing was really loud, like especially like Blood and Cheese. Not so much Maelor, but Blood and Cheese being not as vicious in the show as they were in the books was like a loud criticism around that time, and I guess that stuck with him after that. Yeah, but you're right, he probably is afraid of being cancelled, but man, when you get to his age, man, you just don't give a crap about a lot of things anymore. We'll see, because I feel like the older you get, the more you're just like, I'm going to say what I want to say, man.
Let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. George's new blog post, the fellow author's words on what he said to them privately.
That's crazy, man. That's what I was saying. Blood and Fire to a sequel name, to a book named Fire and Blood, seems like one of the worst naming choices yet. Hey George, you're right. They're really messing up your work. Here's an idea: write a book that Adrian can't interfere with. Yeah, like as much as George is in the absolute right, he also needs to finish his damn book.